And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to another victorious edition of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After Penn State, part 2, if you will. Last few days ago, your Indiana Hoosiers go on to defeat Penn State 83-78, taking the record to 17-11 on the season. 8-9, inching that much closer to 500 in the Big Ten. A little bit of a nervous one going into it. IU hasn't been the best in the past at responding after big wins, especially big rivalry wins. Was kind of nervous to see what kind of letdown physically we would have, what kind of tired legs we would have with guys playing extended minutes. But wasn't really the issue. And while it wasn't the best performance, it did carry over some things from that Purdue game that looked really good. And the main thing, excuse me, that I'll say is just IU still playing very physical. And that's what this game was, a very physical game of runs. Back and forth in the first half would lead IU to be down going into half, but they continued to battle in the second half. And it was the 3-guard lineup that we have been begging for, that we have seen recently, that carries IU home, having Anthony in there with Trey Galloway and with Miles all together, being that force on defense as well, bringing up the pressure, all that kind of thing. And it was that pressure at the end of the game that has kind of led to mistakes in the past when it's kind of close. But IU held on in this one with some great threes at the end of the game from some of their big guys, from some of their seniors to close out this game. Thank you for being here with us. I'm your host, Chad Schwartzkopf. Here with me always, Martha, the mop lady. Martha, your thoughts on this Penn State game?
It was a game I made a late decision. My day job had me down in southern Indiana this week a little bit, and I made kind of I was overnight. I was going to be in the Jasper area yesterday morning, so I'm like, you know what, let's just jump on, get a ticket, and do it. And so made kind of the last minute decision to head over, and I'm glad I did. But same comments you made. I was talking to my buddy Josh, who's in the IU Media School, before the game, and we were both talking about how exactly what you said. This game has kind of let down written all over it. Big win over Purdue. Obviously, this team's been incredibly inconsistent. Penn State at moments has had IU's number, the early season win against them, or the early conference season win against them aside. It's been a kind of a team that's kind of caused Indiana some problems. So it was like, man, how is this going to go? But I thought for everything, it was a struggle defensively. I think Penn State ended up shooting 60% from the field on twos, and they really looked, from my angle, I sat kind of up behind the Penn State bench. Penn State looked a lot better than their record indicates. And maybe that was just Indiana's inability to guard the dribble drive, but, shooting 60% from the field, their guards at times, it felt like, could get whatever they wanted. And their big even had some success against Umar Ballo at times too, and they fed him down low early. I was surprised they didn't go to him more. But the energy both within the team and in the arena was, I've been to a handful of games this year. That was the best I've seen it. I think everything that's transpired led up to this point and happened has taken a lot of weight off of everybody's shoulders, and everybody just feels a little looser, a little more free. And I think that's kind of showing in how the team is playing, even when the defense might not be great or some shots are falling from the opponent. They're just locking in instead of just saying, "Oh, here we go again." They're locking in and they're finding a way. And I think that's what you saw on Wednesday night, which was really impressive to me. Every time Penn State punched, Indiana punched back to the point where they punched back enough that they were the ones that came out on top. So it was great to see. I mean, because now we talked about it before the Purdue game. This team's kind of putting itself in a position here down the stretch where its fate's in its own hands in terms of making the tournament. You've got some winnable games left on the schedule, but it's just nice to see when it would be so easy for everybody to fold with everything that's going on. It's just nice to see everybody punching, fighting, and giving everybody kind of, you've got a handful of seniors on this squad, a couple, right, that have been here for a long time. You've got Woody leaving. It's just nice to see everybody putting themselves in a position to leave on somewhat of a high note, which I'm really excited about. So overall, it was a great effort, and proud of the guys and how they fought.
Yeah, that energy and that excitement definitely played through the TV as well when I was watching it as well. And part of it had me a little concerned. Student section obviously honed in on one player, the lesser known of the Baldwin brothers. And he started to go off, and I did have a little bit of nerves with that as well, because a la Harper Jr., we have had issues in the past where student section will chime in on one player and really try to bear him down, become mortal enemies, and that player takes that as motivation and tends to go off. And that almost happened with Baldwin. So I was a little nervous with that, and I kind of wanted to let some of that colorful language slow down from the student section. So a little bit of grief to them for that. But you hit on something that's really great there, or alluded to it at least. And listening to Assembly Call, Coach Tonsoni also mentioned this as well. And I wanted to talk about this, that right now, what really feels great about this team is the fit. And I think that's been the struggle a lot of the season. And part of the word for Coach saying the H word, hasn't been necessarily a play style for them to get a hump over, but to find that combination right. And it's a bummer that we found that now, but the fit of this team feels right. The combination of guys out there feel right. Yes, we've been harking about that, about playing the one big, and it took Woody too long, and therein lies probably most of the argument of why he is on the outs, because it does take him a little too long to find this situation. But there is the right fit, and the right fit is not always about putting your best physical talent or your best skilled players together. A lot of times it takes having the Luke Goodies, the Anthony Leals to kind of mold and bring up the level of those around him. That's really kind of the strength of Anthony Leal. Not only what he does off the box, the box score for the team, but what he does for the players around him communication wise. Guys get locked in a little bit more, that elevates them around. And you also see it as well, just more specifically with Trey Galloway, that he is kind of a calming factor or a real cheerleader on the floor, honestly, for Trey Galloway. You see their connection. You always see in those timeouts, Anthony looking back to him and smiling. And I'm sure that brings relief and confidence to Trey Galloway. Your thoughts on any of that things about the team kind of feeling like they fit better now?
Yeah, 100%. I think, I think the frustrating part of all of it was, it almost happened by, it almost like it was predicated on injuries and hands were forced for it to get to this point. And when you sit there and think about the what if side of it, like, had some of these moves been made just, regardless of injury, right? Because again, we went back, I can't remember what game it was, where both bigs, even when Malik was healthy, both bigs got their share of minutes. Both bigs, scored in double figures, still allowed Indiana to play with one big and four small on the court. And we just look how much better they've been since we've started doing that. And, I don't know what would have happened with Woody either way, if we would have had a successful season, if this would have been, his last or whatnot. But you just think about like just starting the season off with a lineup like that and what position Indiana would be in right now had they done that. Is kind of the what if side of it. But you're right. I mean, things just look so much smoother, a lot better. The offense looks just night and day better. I will say this about Ace Baldwin, and he regardless, and I don't agree with what the student section necessarily chanted at him, but he brought every bit of that on himself. Before he was even the target of the student section, he targeted the student section. He made a tough shot. And there might have been like some individual jawing at him, but he made a tough shot, turned to him, looked up at him and said something, and something that the minute he said that, it was on from the student section. All of them saw that. And when you're turning and screaming at, a few thousand 18 to 22-year-olds where the libations are flowing freely within the stadium, that is going to be your end result. Maturity is not something that's probably, in the front of their minds. So he brought all of that on himself. I don't love the chant. I had some secondhand embarrassment, but I'm also like, what do you expect when, I think his coach was upset with how he engaged with the student section, but he brought all of that on. And to your point, it was like the minute that started, I'm like, oh, he's going to go off. He is going to. So that part of it was frustrating. But back to, I just Anthony, Trey, Luke, our guards just, I think, are in a really good spot right now. I think that it's just opened things up for them a little bit more offensively to where they're playing with a ton of confidence, and that's what you love to see. So it's exciting, and it bodes well for the few games we have down the stretch here.
Yeah. And Ballo, again, you mentioned a little bit about injuries and stuff we've dealt with, and we're kind of back in that realm again. Obviously, when Malik was announced that he was out with the flu going into it, was a little concerning because I really wanted him to be back in this and be able to see him respond after having one of the better games that he's had this year against Purdue. And then obviously Ballo didn't play as many minutes, so it was going to be interesting to see how he was going to come out. And like we've seen a lot this year, when Malik was injured earlier, Ballo just steps up. Ballo just comes in. He's just a competitor. He just wants to win. You've seen it before in games where we fell apart at the end, where he's getting on other players and stuff. And he's just a beast underneath. Yeah, he had his struggles defending their big, he was very tall and very mobile. So that's kind of going to be a little bit of the Achilles heel to him. But I would argue that he's just one of the best players on this team. Ballo is at stepping up when his number is called. And you saw a lot in this game. IU played through him, and that's where IU had a lot of success, being able to be in that 4 out, stretching it out, feeding it to him, letting him go to the basket, find his points. Then they would crowd in more on him. That would open up more 3-point shooting, all that kind of stuff to go on, and just had a great stat line as well. 20 points for him, 8 for 14 for shooting, 4 for 6 from the free throw line. So while Indiana overall as a team had a struggle from the free throw line, he actually did pretty well. Was a beast on the board at 12 rebounds, 5 assists. Like I said, playing through him, he was really great passing it out. And then played most of the game. Hatton came in for him, I think, about 2 minutes in the first half and maybe a minute or so in the second half. But thought it was another fantastic game by Ballo. Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, again, I think it was a unique matchup. I mean, Penn State went really big at him. They're long 7-footer, and I don't remember much from the first matchup at the Palestra, but that I was impressed by. I thought their big should have gotten more touches down low. Penn State guards scored really well, and it's tough to make arguments when a team shoots 60% from the field. I thought. And oftentimes Penn State got kind of what they wanted going downhill to the hoop. But I really felt like that their big did pretty well against Ballo at times. I think he adjusted defensively and started to play a little bit better. But you had to, it was a game, Indiana tried to turn to Logan Hatton there for a little bit in the first half, and Hatton just couldn't contain him near to the extent that Ballo had. And obviously with Renew being unavailable, and it was concerning because you didn't even see Renew on the bench. So hoping he's well for this West Coast swing, because we're going to need him. But it was a game where Ballo was going to have to be on the court, 90% of the time, right? Your spot breaks and things like that. But I thought he adjusted defensively as the game went on. They're big. I can't remember his name, but he wasn't getting near the good looks that he had early in the game, and Ballo was getting open offensively and really impacted the game on both ends. So one of his and just watching him, kind of in person, playing with passion, right? I think he's taken some heat this year for, does he care? Does he not? Is his mind in the right spot? But I thought across the board, and Oumar Ballo included, that this team is as engaged as I've seen it. And it showed in his play, and he had a big game, and he's going to need to have big games here down the stretch for IU to have a chance. So really, really solid game for him, in a game where a man of that size to be on a court for, almost 40 minutes, it's a big ask. It's, getting that big body up and going up and down the court. It's impressive to watch. So I thought it was a great, great effort by Ballo.
Yeah. And I love the little moments that they use to kind of steal his his effort. It's something you don't see often when we're shooting offensive free throws. When we're shooting free throws, you never see Baldo on the line. He's always back on defense. Just save his legs just a slight bit. Give him an easy back. Another one, a player that I think was huge in this game and has been huge as of recent is Trey Galloway. We've kind of gotten that good Trey Galloway at the end, surging here at the end. Kind of a great curtain call for him as a Hoosier. And in this game especially, he was very instrumental. When IU was down by 2 points with about 6 minutes left in this game, it was 2 back-to-back three-pointers by him that gave IU a 4-point lead that IU would not relinquish for the rest of the game. He did struggle in the first half, I will say. It was a little tough for him, but he made up for it in the second half. His stat line reads as 16 points, 6 for 11 from the field, 4 for 5 from 3, which was huge for him. He didn't shoot a single free throw in this game, but 9 assists on 6 turnovers. Most of those turnovers happening in the first half. Just a great game by him. What do your thoughts on Trey?
I think Trey, if you don't give it to Umar Ballo, I thought Trey was Wednesday night's MVP. He had some questions. I thought the officiating was, and I never like to complain or bicker about that, but the officiating was a little subpar through that game. I think he had to sit early in the first half with a couple fouls. Maybe late in the first half he had 3 fouls. Early in the second half, I can't remember, but there's a stretch where he got 2 quick fouls called on him and didn't let that really impact his game. But I thought his play, specifically when Penn State kept punching in the second half, Trey was a guy that got big baskets. That stretch where he made those 2 threes, but it included him getting his shot blocked, I thought was kind of a just his game in a nutshell against Penn State, right? There were moments where it didn't go his way, but the kid kept punching back, and those 2 threes, that's as loud, being that was as loud as I've heard Assembly Hall since I've been there in a couple of years. I'm sure Purdue was loud, but those Assembly Hall pop moments where it's, a big play happens, big shot goes in, and it's just Assembly Hall erupting. It's you got that after that second made 3, and it was fun to see not only the crowd do that, but the players embrace that. It's something I think with the way they're playing, they deserve it. But Trey I thought Trey, again, I thought he was an MVP style performance from him in that game, just all over defensively, all over offensively, just watching him work right off the ball, and his constant movement just works his tail off on both ends of the court, which is something that you appreciate. And the fact that he didn't get to the line is amazing with a guy that gets downhill the hoop like him. So, but anytime you get that kind of performance out of him, the 9 dishes too, I think he's doing a tremendous job where, we came into the season thinking we would need to rely on him as the point guard, but it's kind of fell upon him again. And I think he's doing a tremendous job with it, seeing the court, dishing the ball. So it's been impressive to see.
Yeah. And speaking of that, with point guard, next one is Miles Rice that I want to talk about. And while Trey went on that little bit of run at the end, it was really kind of our guards that closed this one out for us. There was a point about 3 minutes left where Penn State had made a 3-pointer and then went down, made some free throws and brought it within 2. And then it was Rice that went on a little 5-0 kind of run on his own there, where he made a 3-pointer, and then on a good fast break, he made a nice layup to kind of bring IU up by 7. So huge swing at the end from him. And I think he's kind of clicking here at the end of the season as well. I think you can attribute some of that to the fact of him and Trey playing off each other. I love it when they're in together. I love the defense that Miles has brought as of recent to this team, but I think he feels a little bit of pressure is off, and I think they kind of equally so to each other. There are times where okay, I'll take it up this time, and I've got it, or and then Trey will be I got it for this one. So love the way they're playing together, and love the Miles Rice that we're just kind of finding this at the end of the season here, and he's going to be a coveted addition and hope that if he continues this momentum, hope that he stays on this team leading into next year and whatever the coaching change is, because he could be a good foundational point guard to build off of this season and onto next year. But in this game, he finished with 13 points, 4 for 6 from the field, a perfect 2 for 2 from 3, and 3 for 6 from the free throw line. Your thoughts on Miles' game?
I thought defensively he was outstanding. I think a lot of times you would see him get paired up with Ace Baldwin, and Ace had a good game, but Ace is going to have a good game. He's a veteran guard, and it's a tough guard, right? He didn't start off guarding Baldwin. I thought when he was in there, he did a really solid job of working to stay in front of him. Offensively, sometimes I hold my breath with Miles. I think there were times where he forced a little bit, but there's also times where he made some massive shots. He's the one who found Trey for that second 3. He hit that corner 3. So everything he kind of gave away offensively, and I think he had 4 or 5 turnovers in his 20 minutes ish, which is a little bit high. And I feel sometimes like he forces offensively a little bit, but he's also a guy that needs to be assertive offensively, if that makes sense, right? It's as a point guard, we've asked for him to do that with the speed he has on the court, right? He should be, you can see it a little bit with Penn State's guards. They do a really good job of getting downhill offensively. I think that's what we've wanted to see from Miles as well, is just with that speed and quickness, he should be getting to the hole a lot more often than he does. But I thought from an overall game standpoint, for kind of some of the hold your breath moments offensively, I thought he was outstanding defensively. And when we needed some plays to be made, ultimately he made them. Knocked down a huge corner 3 when we needed one. Again, had that fast break opportunity where it was a moment where he could have forced something at the rim, but he found Trey out there for that second 3. And it was a huge momentum shift in the game. And that's, I think, compliments to Miles Rice and what he was able to do there. So 4 for 6 from the field, 2 for 2 from the line, 3 for 6 from the free throw line. That's a good game. Would have loved to see him find a couple more dishes in there, 2 assists, but overall that's a really solid performance and what you want from a Miles Rice, especially when he's coming off the bench.
Yeah. Great play by him. We'll start to dive into a bit of numbers in this game. And I think there's some good ones to look at. There's some negatives to look at. Obviously, one of the negatives, and you're going to see this, and especially in a Penn State, playing against Penn State, because they're a very high pressure physical team, but 14 turnovers wasn't the greatest in this game. And 10 of them coming from Trey and Miles, obviously not ideal out of your 2 point guards and stuff in this game. The very odd one, and unlike Indiana stat in this, would be shooting from 3. Fantastic to see it, obviously, how good it was, being 10 for 15 for 67% from 3, but a very odd then juxtaposition of the easier free throws. IU goes 60% on 15 for 25. As the game was winding down and getting closer towards the end, it was a little nerve-wracking to start to try to do that math about all the points left at the line that luckily at the end IU did not need. But obviously going up and down, other stats to look at, the assists, again, numbers were pretty good at 24. And as you said, Miles was a little bit lower than we'd want at 2, but Trey more than made up for that with 9 for his. So amazing to see him almost in double digits for that. Any stats that stand out for you?
We talked about just Penn State's ability to shoot, at a high level from the floor. Indiana shot just as well. You mentioned 3-point shooting and shooting almost 67% from the 3-point line, but they were almost 57% on 2-point field goals. So that's really high, a really high efficiency rate for Indiana. Also look at Indiana had 4 starters that played 30 minutes or more, and their 5th starter, Mackenzie Mbaka, played 28 minutes. So Indiana, by force of hand, has really had to shorten up their bench. Only played 3 bench guys. Logan Hatton only played 4 minutes. Then you had Miles Rice with 23 and Cannon Carlisle with 10. And Bryson Tucker's kind of disappeared from the equation. Sure there's more to that story. Don't know what's going on from from a health standpoint, or what his intentions are long term. But Woody's touched on that about having conversations with him and what that looks like. I'm sure Bryson thinks he should be on the floor more, so that might be into it, and maybe they just made a decision to go a certain way after the season. Who knows? Hate to read too much into it, but it's certainly affected what Indiana has available off the bench, especially when Malik Renew's unavailable. So I thought the stat that sticks out to me is what Indiana was able to do, because that's a big ask. Having Luke Goody played 35 minutes, Umar Bala played 36 minutes, Trey Galloway played 34 minutes, Anthony Leal played 30 minutes. That's a lot of minutes out of 4 of your starters. And like I said, McKenzie almost played 28. So short bench, efficient bench, but I think it's a hat tip to those guys for playing that many minutes. And we talked about Umar and the size that he is, but the way that Indiana flies around on the perimeter as well. Those are guys that have to be in shape to be able to play that many minutes, and hopefully they can maintain that down the stretch. But it's an impressive feat by that group of starters and what they were able to do in that many minutes.
Yep. Well, I'm gonna kick it to you because I know you got to get out of here, get your kid to school. So just go ahead and give me your closing thoughts on this game.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster this season, Chad. We went through that stretch where we were starting to, wonder why we were waking up and doing these, Groundhog Day version shows where we could just probably play the previous episode over and maybe have you go in and change the opponent's name, and it would probably still be applicable. So, we went from that to, fortunately we're in a college basketball world where what the bubble takes, the bubble can give right back pretty quickly in terms of it being very, very soft. And, in a league like the Big Ten, if you get a couple quad one wins, you're right back in a position to where you're on the correct side of that bubble. And I think that's what Indiana's done, and credit to them with everything going on, right? We've talked at length about that, and, when it could have been easy just to kind of say, hey, we're good here. Let's just get this season over with. But they're not. They're trying to play. They're playing for their coach. We saw that after Purdue and the way they embraced him. They're playing for themselves. They're playing for the program, and it's put themselves in a position, right? I think if you're now in a situation where you've got 3 games left, 2 out west, 1 an opponent that I think we should beat. Oregon is up for grabs, then you come home and play Ohio State on what should be, a really great senior day environment. Woody's last home game. Now all of a sudden you're in a position where if you go win 2 or 3 for them, I think you're really in a good spot for the tournament. And then you've got the Big Ten tournament to kind of put the icing on that cake. So now you're in a position where we're not having to rely on a bunch of teams losing. Your fate's kind of in your own hands, and that's a good place to be considering where we were, a couple weeks ago. So it's exciting. You've got to appreciate, we've been on these guys for a long while, but you've got to appreciate how they've embraced the moment and said, you know what, we're going to try to go out on as high of a note as we can. And they're playing like it. They're playing with a lot of energy, and I think that's all Indiana fans have really ever wanted and asked for, right? Obviously we want them to win, but there's also like the non-negotiables of playing hard and playing engaged and all that stuff that at times have maybe, I think the losing kind of emphasizes some of when that might be missing, but at times there's been those question marks and there haven't been here in the last couple of weeks, which is really, really great to see. And now everybody seems really engaged and pulling for this program down the stretch. And let's see what they can do with these final 3 games. I'm excited. I'm excited to cheer them on. And hopefully we're sitting here, you mentioned maybe getting together after the West Coast games, but hopefully we're sitting here talking about, the same situation where the fate's in our own hands. So appreciate you, Chad, and appreciate being a part of this show.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Martha. Have a good one. Like Martha said, obviously next game's lined up for Indiana. Indiana plays tomorrow, about 6:00. They already over there. You can see players tweeting out pictures out in Seattle. It's that Seattle swing that we're going to have to get used to now in the expanded Big Ten. But very much the fate is in their hands. Like Martha said, if we split win 2 out of these 3 games, then you can pretty much punch the card because it's a very soft middle ground of the NCAA this year. A very winnable game on Saturday. And then let's punch it out and try to steal that quad one away game from Oregon, and then we come home for senior night against Ohio State. So it is in their hands, and then we have the tournament. We can add a little cherry on top with maybe get by the first round of the Big Ten tournament to kind of cement things, and then you're feeling a lot better going into Selection Sunday. The one thing I will want to echo, though, with that is the fact that last final home game against Ohio State, a very winnable game, but what, as Martha alluded to earlier in this Penn State game, as the crowd has been fantastic recently. Hoosier Nation, you've been great there at home, loud, still supporting things. I think a lot of that is because things have been settled with the coaching and all that stuff. So we're able to be full-throated and excited again. And I transition that to kind of speak of our unofficial sponsor and say, if you can't go to the game, try not to sell them. Let's get those tickets donated to Hoosier Ticket Project. You can go to HoosierTicketProject.org to donate those tickets, and let's get those excited fans in there cheering and screaming for Hoosier Nation, for this team, giving them that energy that they need, because these players are really exerting it out there on the court for IU right now. And I haven't said the word in a while. You know me on this show and how I am with using the word hope. And the hope is back right now. There is hope that we can make the tournament, and hope abounds. So I'm excited. As Martha said, it's a lot easier now to get up and talk to you guys on this show. Programming note, as Martha did say, both of us are pretty busy this weekend and leading into this week, so probably look for the next show to be a comment on these West Coast swing games on probably about next Friday or so. You can find out on Twitter when all that stuff is going to happen. But I think for now, for this edition of Hoosier Morning After, that's going to do it for us. Follow me on Twitter at General Chadwick. There you can find out more information about the show when we're going to go live. Make sure you subscribe if you're watching on the YouTube right now. Hit that thumbs up and everything. You'll get notifications as well if you have that notifications turned on about when we're going to go live, when that next show is going to happen. I appreciate you being here with me. I appreciate Martha always being with me as well. Let's keep this energy going. Let's keep this excitement for this team going. And let's see where we go. Let's close out the Woodson era on a high note. It's been ups and downs. Wherever you feel, wherever you fall, things have settled now. So let's go out on a high note. Hoosier Nation, what do you say? Until then, guys, thank you for being here with us. Go out there, have yourselves a wonderful Friday. And as always, let's go Hoosiers.